Welcome, everybody, to another special edition of the Dual Boot Diaries, a show where my co-host Will and I talk about trying to use Linux daily. Will is not here with me today. My name's Adam Patrick Murray, but I am not alone. I have a very special guest, a longtime friend, Mike Danseglio. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be on the show.
Now, you are a longtime Linux user, but your day job is also as a security professional. Please tell folks who are not familiar with you what you do.
I work in information security, data security. I do all kinds of different things. I do white hat, gray hat, black hat work. I do research. I write content. I teach. I do a little bit of everything. I just love InfoSec. Anything I can do in that space is good by me.
Nice. I love it. And I thought it would be fun. I'm actually here in your home office. I'm still on the road. We had an episode recently with Wendell. I stuck around to hang out with you, and I'm inside the firewall. I'm inside your firewall.
Trusted entity, my friend.
Yeah, because I think it's important to talk about security around Linux. Now, you've been on the Full Nerd podcast. We've done some separate videos about security on the PCWorld channel, but today I want to talk to you about Linux specifically because I'm early on in my journey,
right?
And boy, do I have some questions to ask you. But before we do that, I kind of want to back up. I want to hear your history with Linux. When did you start using Linux?
I started using Unix back in college, back a million years ago, when had to ask for permission to access the mainframe or the mini. Yeah, that long ago. So, and we were using like pure Unix way back in the day. For those of you that are geezers out in the audience, I had a bang path to my UUCP. That would mean nothing to most of you, but a few of you probably just laughed or thought, wow, that's old. I've been using Unix and Linux on and off my entire career. So in particular, a lot of recent work, I've been using Kali Linux, because it's a great security distro. There are other security distros out there, but I'm most familiar with and most comfortable with Kali.
Okay, so but have you mostly used desktop Linux? Have you done some command line stuff like CLI stuff? That's what Will had more experience in as well.
So I've done both. I've definitely walked both paths. There are some tools that are just way better, way more effective on command or in terminal window. Sorry, you said command prompt. Terminal window.
Whoops. So
easy.
Okay, yeah.
You don't want to get the nerds mad.
Oh, so sorry.
So yeah, I'll use terminal window when the tools are appropriate there. There are many tools that work great there, but there's also GUI tools. I tend to be a GUI guy. I like the buttons. I like the windows. I like the interface. So when a tool is available there, I tend to use it. But definitely, I don't have a particular preference one way or the other.
Okay. And also, you worked at Microsoft for a long time on the security team. You used Linux while you were at Microsoft?
Yeah.
Was that allowed?
No, it wasn't. Thanks for asking on a podcast that we're going to publish.
Perfect.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, to be honest, working at Microsoft, at least in my experience, and from what I understand, full disclaimer, I believe the culture has changed quite a bit. But back in the day, if you used anything other than Windows at Microsoft, you were a pariah. You were absolutely looked at in a different light. From what I understand now, it's much different. It's much more open. Okay. We have Windows subsystem for Linux. We have proper support. We have PowerShell for Linux. Hell, so I think Microsoft's changed a lot. But back in the day, it was. You didn't talk about Linux. You didn't talk about Mac OS. You didn't talk about BOS. You didn't talk about any. You didn't talk about OS2. God forbid you talked about OS2 at Microsoft, even though we were kind of in the beginning there. It was kind of ours. But yeah. It was Windows or nothing.
Interesting. Okay. Do you feel like having that experience of using Linux while you were at Microsoft helped you, like with context and stuff, rather than just being all in on Windows? Like, did you take stuff from the Linux world and try to implement it in Windows?
So I think it's an interesting question. Never really thought about that. I think I learned some things from Linux, not really stealing or gathering, but more what was good about Linux that maybe we could reflect in Windows, and what was bad about Linux that maybe we don't want to reflect in Windows. What kind of stuff, as a user, mostly it was as a user, what did I enjoy about the Linux experience? And if so, that, like file system security in Linux, super duper ultra simple. So maybe that's something that we should reflect in Windows rather than it being some convoluted nightmare of configuration. So yeah, I mean, you learn from everything you do, right? But yeah, there's a lot to learn from Linux.
And so you mentioned you use Kali, which is a specific distro for security professionals, or security. Is it like for security professionals, or is it just for like the security minded?
So Kali is essentially a distro. It's Debian. It's Debian based. That includes an enormous number of security tools, mostly penetration testing tools. So tools that allow us to check on the security of Wi-Fi or wired network or applications or services. I don't think it's really for users that aren't security professionals, just because it's overkill. There's a lot of tools there that most people would never use unless they're looking for security vulnerabilities or verifying security updates or making sure things are protected. So it's for a very narrow set of users.
So do you use Kali daily, or is it like you're bringing it out to do specific stuff?
So it's an interesting question. I like not having a ton of Linux distros around. I'd like to just be really familiar with one. And so what I typically do is I take Kali, I install all the tools that I would use like for security or pen testing, and then I add other tools to it so that I can use it as a daily driver. Like I'll install LibreOffice, I'll install Synaptic, I'll install just like normal VLC, all that kind of stuff. So I can use it as more of a daily driver. I just, because I'm going to have all of my data in that one place, I just think it's easier for me. I could certainly have multiple Linux distros and multi-boot, but I don't know. Maybe I'm lazy that way.
How much of your world is spent in Windows versus Linux?
Probably 75-25, probably 75% Windows, 25% Linux. I do dual boot my desktop PC and my laptop between Kali and Windows, because sometimes there are stuff, especially with Kali, that I want to do on a desktop. Like desktops typically have really strong GPUs. And if I need to do like brute force password cracking or things like that, I don't want to use a laptop. Even the best laptop is not going to be anywhere near what I need.
Interesting. Okay. Do you have experience in other distros as well, or is Kali just kind of your only one?
I've dabbled with like Ubuntu, pure Ubuntu and Mint and all that. Yeah, but I've done a little bit in different distros, but I keep coming back to Kali, I think, because it's familiar.
Okay.
I throw KDE on it.
Yeah, that was my next question. You saw it coming, KDE or GNOME, but it sounds like you're a KDE guy.
I pronounced GNOME correctly, Adam.
You mean GNOME?
I mean GNOME. When you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you're wandering through a dungeon, you don't find a group of gnomes. You find a group of gnomes. The thing on your lawn, that little guy with the hat, he's a gnome. He's a garden gnome, not a garden gnome.
Well, but it's not a desktop environment. We're talking about the desktop environment.
We agree to disagree.
Yeah,
if you're watching this,
yeah, and it's obviously GIF. Yeah.
Son of a gun.
Yeah.
GIF.
Right,
GIF.
so,
it's pronounced GIF.
No, wrong. So why do you like KDE?
I don't know. Actually, I genuinely don't. It's just visually appealing. Okay. I don't really have any other. I've used XFCE. I've used GNOME. It's just, I don't know. KDE just looks a little better.
Okay. All right. And watch this. I'm going to pull out some expert terminology here. Is it a rolling distro?
Ooh.
You like that?
It is.
It is.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So you're getting like the latest security patches and stuff like that. Why is it needed for what you do?
Well, that's a very good question, actually, because a lot of times in Kali, we get firmware updates for devices, drivers, kernel, firmware updates that allow us to do a lot of things in Kali that we can't do in other distros. For example, if you're a network person, packet injection. and monitor mode. We can change the network interface for both wired and wireless to do things that regular network interfaces can't do. And it's because we can install or compile into the kernel non-free components. And so it's interesting. These components we could theoretically integrate into other distros, but Kali is the distro that needs that kind of direct network connectivity or direct network interface connectivity. So one good example is if we're going to do like Wi-Fi spoofing, we're going to just send a bunch of Wi-Fi packets out there. Wi-Fi network or Wi-Fi adapters typically don't want to let us do that because they're supposed to obey the rules and do proper Wi-Fi. We have drivers in the kernel that allow us to do that.
Interesting. Okay. Are you actually like developing anything? Are you a developer? Are you doing kernel commits and things like that?
Oh God. No. Okay. So kernel developers, if any one of you are watching and you are one, you know that you are a different species because you are in that mindset. And I would never be able to do that. That's heavy duty, hardcore, way beyond me kind of work. I do, however, am respectful enough, and I watched one of your earlier podcasts with Will, I'm respectful enough to make sure that I file bugs appropriately.
Oh, okay.
Whenever I see a problem, because I know kernel developers and all developers, they want to know about bugs because they want to be able to fix them. So I can't contribute in the way of creating code like that. I'm just not capable, but I try to contribute as I can.
Okay, that's fun. And I like you mentioned your desktop and your laptop. Like, is it newish kind of hardware, older hardware? Do you need to have the latest hardware? It sounds like you need a powerful GPU to do some of your stuff, but
for sure, for brute force cracking in particular, a powerful GPU is absolutely critical. Typically NVIDIA, just because AMD GPUs, their drivers on the brute force cracking side in Linux are not as good. They're not as mature. They're not as stable. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with AMD, GPUs or Intel GPUs. It's just with that one use case, brute force cracking, NVIDIA drivers tend to be really, really, really good on the Linux side. As far as the laptop, I have an older laptop. I have a Lenovo X270 because I'm a huge Lenovo ThinkPad fan. And it's a bit older, but it still runs like a champ. It's still amazing. So, and it's not supported by Windows 11. Hint, hint.
Whoops. Okay, so now let's move over into some stuff that I am selfishly wanting to talk to you about because I'm new in this journey.
Okay.
Along the process, there's definitely been times where I've thought in the back of my head, I was like, I kind of really want to talk to Mikey about this because I don't know. I have like specific questions. Like there were certain things that I would hit that I'd be like, oh my God. Like the first one I'm going to bring up is I was downloading Archie. It's a whole separate story. Archie. Arch. I'm sorry.
Arch.
Not the comic.
Okay.
The distro. I was downloading Arch, and what it recommended was doing a checksum on the download and the distro and things like that. And I was like, well, should I do a checksum? Should I make sure what I downloaded was an actual distro? Like, did somebody inject something into it? Like, should I have done the checksum?
It depends, honestly, on where you got it from. If you got it from a reliable source, if you got it from a known good source, then there's no real. It's an optional thing. If you want to be very, very, very sure that the image that you download is the authentic, unmodified image, then a checksum is the best way. And it's a very classic internet way to make sure that you've downloaded exactly what you expected to download.
And how does it work? I haven't dug into it,
So So typically when you download a file like an ISO, something like that, there'll be an MD5 checksum on the page or a SHA-256 checksum. And that's a hash, that's a digital hash of the file. And it's a value. It's typically a numeric value or it could be a hexadecimal value.
Okay.
So you download the file. Mm-hmm. You look at the website to see what that value is that the website says it should be. You then, on the machine that you've downloaded it to, calculate the hash or calculate the checksum and make sure that the numbers match. Make sure the number on the website equals the number that you see.
Okay.
So I typically download those in Windows, and in Windows, it's a PowerShell commandlet. that you can use to calculate the hash. I don't honestly know on Linux. I'm quite positive there's a way to calculate a hash of a file in Linux, but on Windows, it's just PowerShell.
Well, I did notice on Ventoy, which I use to load the live environment before I install it, that there is usually some sort of checksum option at
there you go.
booting in. So essentially that's doing that for you?
Yep.
Okay, but I didn't, like, I guess, how's it doing that? Because usually on Ventoy, I'm just throwing the ISO in there. Like, I'm not throwing the other file that you'd
have to give it a number to compare against.
Yeah.
So
so if I were to pick it, they'd be like, okay, we'll find the file, point to it.
Most likely. Okay. I know that's what Rufus does, so I'm pretty sure that's what Ventoy would do.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Well, like, do you think I need to worry? Like, how much do I actually need to worry about this?
So how much would I worry about it? I would always get my ISOs from an authentic, known good source, and I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
That's as far as I would go.
Okay. And then the next thing, so as I was installing Cache, when I finally realized that it wasn't Arch that I wanted, it was Cache, I was going through the description on the website of like how to configure things and stuff like that, and I saw some talk in there, but then also I was watching some other videos and people were like, by default, the firewall was not turned on. This is what you got to do to make sure the firewall's turned on or something like that. And I was just like configuring the firewall, which I don't know. Like, I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing, so I don't want to break anything.
Right.
But like, I have a firewall on my router. Like, do I need to have the firewall on the operating system as well?
No. Short answer, no. Slightly longer answer. If you're behind a firewall already, all you're really protecting yourself from, if you have a firewall on your computer as well, is other devices on your network, right? Things that are already inside that boundary.
Okay.
So if you were on a untrusted network, if you're on a network that you just didn't know what else was there, or you believe maybe malicious actors were there, you'd want a firewall in the operating system.
Oh, like if you're public Wi-Fi or something.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just like, yeah, do I need to worry about that?
Well, to be fair, it can't hurt. It generally can't hurt. But if it's a lot of effort to configure, it's probably not worth the effort to get it going. It definitely can't hurt to have an extra firewall in place.
Okay, I don't remember on Cache. Obviously, I'm not running Cache. I'm on Ubuntu, but I believe it was on by default in here. I mean, I guess we can check after this, but okay. The other thing is, and I know Will ran into this whole wallet thing, having the operating system like store some of the login information, Will specifically was running into KDE wallet stuff. I actually have a wallet here on Ubuntu running GNOME that every time I launch Chrome, it'll pop open and ask me to put in my user password.
Oh, right.
How safe is that wallet?
It's as safe as the operating system. If you're getting your operating system from a trustworthy source and you trust really Linux, the entire paradigm, it's just as safe as anything else.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because like typically for password managers and stuff, I use a third-party password manager, things like that. So I guess there's not really an analogy on the Windows side, right? Like UAC is something like that, I guess, but like storing the passwords in a Windows wallet. Like something built into Windows, like I don't think that exists, right?
Well, Credential Manager exists, but that's really that's not the same scope and scale. Credential Manager is typically just for other devices on the LAN, like UNC shares, like file shares, things like that. Beyond that, no, not really, not into the OS.
Okay, and so the last thing personally that I continue to run into, this is like definitely something that like we're talking about every episode, and I'm constantly not arguing with people, but like people have different opinions, varying wildly. I thought a lot of people would have opinions about distro of choice or window manager or not desktop environment, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But really, the thing that people seem to be arguing about is where to get their applications, like their package managers and stuff like that. So yeah, because by default. And I talked about this early on, like I'm trained on the Windows side to be like, oh, I want to download Slack and Discord, OBS. I'm going to go to their website and download the package. And then I found out, oh, there's a repo built into Linux or into that distro. and I could just either use the built-in application manager or go to the terminal and do the sudo apt install, whatever. But then like Will uses another thing called Paru, which is a whole other thing. There's FlatHub or Flatpak, and those have a different way of packaging stuff up. Okay, I got a lot of questions around this. So
easy, breathe, breathe, relax.
Yeah, well, because it really is. A lot of people have like debates on like where to get stuff. Some of it is performance. Some of it is like, oh, this version is like newer than this version and stuff. Like I want to ask you specifically about the security implication stuff. Like if I'm installing something from the package manager that's built into the distro, how sure am I that that's like an actual like application?
Okay, so typically the distros come with obviously some kind of package manager. Those package managers have a list of trusted sources. The list of trusted sources is the distribution owner or the repo owner's list of things that they believe you should trust. And essentially, by trusting the distribution itself, by using it, you're inherently going to trust, very likely to trust whatever sources they list by default. So, and any built-in package manager is going to pull from those sources. So, I would say that the built-in package manager would probably be about as trustworthy as the built-in package manager would be about as trustworthy as the distro itself. Just because you're trusting the same entity or group of entities, really, group of people, to make those security decisions.
Yeah, well, because I mean, I like, it's one of the reasons why I picked Ubuntu is because it is a large company with a lot of people working on it.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I guess I don't know. I should research into this. Maybe like, do they have a team of people that are like testing each application and being like, you know what, this is what we trust to put in there? Or do you think that it's falling back to like, because it's Debian based, right? So maybe is that more on like the Debian side and they're just rolling it forward to be like, well, if Debian trusts it, we're going to trust it in Ubuntu.
This is where this conversation gets hairy, my
friend.
Right?
Well, and because then it's like, okay, well, then there's other distros that are based off Ubuntu. Like how far is it like transitioning down? Like, well, if they trust it, then I guess I'll trust it.
Well, so this is a big one. This is actually the biggest question I think you're going to ask me at any point on this topic. So the thing is this. What we're seeing now in the security space is what we call a supply chain attack. Mm-hmm. A supply chain attack is where an attacker wants to put malicious code on a device and they infect code that the device would use. But what they do is, let's say you want to install a new terminal app.
Yep.
Cool. So you open a terminal prompt, sudo apt-get install terminal, or cool new terminal, whatever thing terminal. Awesome. What you're doing there is you're trusting that app, that piece of software. That software, however, is probably not all original code. That software relies on other repositories, that built, at least in part, that code. Those repositories were probably also built on other repositories that they rely on, and so on until we get all the way down to some repository that no one's paying attention to, that no one's managing, that no one has modified in years and years and years, and is open, and some entity, some malicious actor says, I'm going to throw some code in that one. I'm going to throw some malicious code in that one. And then it gets compiled into that chunk of code, which gets integrated into the parent or the child code, which gets integrated into the child code, which gets integrated into your new terminal app. And so, the rabbit hole can go pretty darn deep, because if you think about it, modern developers, do they develop every bit of new code completely from scratch? No.
I'm not going to assume so, yeah.
No, I generally speaking, if the code's already been around for a long time, if that functionality has been around a long time, it wouldn't even make sense for them to develop code from scratch for every single thing. They're going to use existing libraries. They're going to use existing code, and sometimes that code gets infected.
So I would assume that's why some people like downloading like Flatpak versions is because it's isolated, right?
Yep.
So was that built in to that whole system to be like, hey, you know what? Like even if you download something, at least the application is isolated from the other applications? Or?
It definitely tends to constrain the impact of malicious code or faulty code is generally where it comes from, but malicious code, sure. Same thing with Docker containers, same thing with to some degree with virtualization. You're just trying to containerize and limit the impact, in this case, of malicious code.
So, okay. So then what do I do? What do you recommend I do?
I recommend you buy an Abacus, because Abacus, can calculate a lot of stuff. You can't surf TikTok on it, unfortunately, but it's definitely not going to get infected. Honestly, it's as far as security, like proactive security on Linux. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Like, so should I be downloading from the built-in package manager? Should I do like a flat pack so that it's at least can containerize in some way?
For typical use, probably just installing from the default package manager that comes from the default sources is fine. Okay. If you have some super secret, ultra sensitive kind of content or work that you're doing, you probably want to isolate it in some way, whether it's a Docker container or whatever it is. Like you'd want to have that extra degree of isolation.
Okay. I mean, like, I'm not too worried, but like for me, it just seems so easy to install some of this stuff. Like even when I go to like FlatHub or whatever, like it's just like a website just full of links to be like, well, I don't know who this dude is. It's got, like 5 reviews and just hit the button, install it. Right? You know what I mean? Like it feels, which is not, I mean, you can install whatever you want on Windows too.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's not a Linux specific thing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. But for some reason, it just feels way more easily accessible when all I can do, or when it's just as easy as like hitting a terminal command and being like, and installed.
Yep.
And there's no, I don't know, there's no equivalent to some sort of pop-up. Like every once in a while on Windows, at least, they'll be like, hey, this looks like you might have downloaded this from an untrusty source.
That's true.
Like there's at least something, and half the time it's actually a false positive. I'm like, no, I know what I'm downloading here. Just run it anyway.
Right.
I don't know. It feels like there's no guardrails at all.
It's different. It's very different in the Linux system. It's not that there's no guardrails, but it's definitely, it's different. And Microsoft is not, Microsoft has a vested interest in protecting you while you're on Windows. Linux is much more of to some degree, the burden shifts to you to be a savvy, educated user and make sure you don't download rando app from rando site,
Yeah, well, I mean, and we always talk about this, like the best practice is you just being smart, downloading from places that don't look sketchy and not surfing to websites that don't,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So yeah, I think that's anything I have personally on my list.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me as a noob?
So
that you would like to know? What's it like to be a noob?
So as a noob, I will ask you a genuine question.
Okay.
And I didn't prepare this. I didn't tell Adam I was going to ask this. As a Unix noob or Linux noob, do you think that you can get a virus?
Oh, this is one of my questions too. Yeah. I would say, based off of what we've talked about in the past, and usually it's around the whole Mac, like, ooh, Macs don't get viruses. And it's like, well, they're less likely to get because they have such a small market share compared to Windows. As far as I okay, well, I should step back. For desktop usage, Linux is, like a couple points, right?
It's very small.
So, but I know Linux rules the rest of the world, so that makes it a little weirder. Because if it was just desktop usage, I'd be like, yeah, you're probably not targeting the smallest user set on the desktop. But Linux literally is on everything else in the rest of the world, so maybe they target that, and the desktop users are like can get hit in the crossfire or something. I don't know a good term for it. So I'm going to say Windows is way worse because there's more desktop. Like
It wasn't really what I asked you, though, my friend. Don't change the question.
Oh yeah. Do they get viruses? Yes, of course. Anything can get a virus.
Okay.
But I think the likelihood of getting a virus is probably, for desktop users, is probably way worse on the Windows side.
Okay, that's fair. I would agree with that, actually.
Yeah. Well, what about the whole idea of like, but maybe they're targeting like, something that runs Linux, but it just so happens to hit downstream consequences on the desktop users.
So what actually happens, interestingly enough, is a lot of malware is now written in an agnostic language that would work on any platform.
Oh,
like
okay.
JavaScript, like Perl. So you a lot of malware is written in a language that is then packaged up into Windows distributable, Linux distributable, Mac OS distributable, all of that kind of stuff. Because if you're think about it, if you're a malware writer, if you're writing malware code, you want your code to run on any old thing you find, right?
True. Yeah.
That helps you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
you might as well.
Yeah. So
pray and pray.
So that was. I'm glad you answered that way, because I think that there's some mystique around Linux being invulnerable to malware. In fact, I saw a website not that long ago about where the theme was switch from Windows 10 to Linux instead of Windows 11 because Linux doesn't get viruses. And that kind of absolute statement, it's not just an absolute statement, which are usually wrong in our space, but it is wrong, right? And I don't want it to give anyone a false sense of security, like, hey, I could download anything and click anything and install anything, and I'm running Linux, so la-di-da, I'll never get a virus. I think that's wrong. I'm not saying, I agree with you, it's far less likely that you'll get malware on Linux, but it's not something where you just assume it's not going to happen, because that's where the weakness occurs.
Yeah, I also think, at least for desktop usage, the kind of people who are using it in the desktop situation are probably more skilled.
Yeah.
Like me, I feel like I know computer hardware enough to be dangerous. I know, Windows enough because we're in this space. So that's why I'm a little bit more open to a Linux kind of experience, where somebody like my grandma would still look at Linux and be like, oh, no, that's, I'm not comfortable with that. So I think that it's built into that a little bit too, that you're probably talking more about users that are more normies. I mean, except for, I guess the difference would be, I've definitely heard a lot of people who are just doing gaming wanting to focus or wanting to switch over to Linux or do most of their gaming on Linux, and then maybe for the game that they need a Windows, they do that. And those are in the most case like people running Bazite and and just gaming. So it's weird. I mean, I haven't heard that context of I've never heard in the wild somebody be like, oh yeah, Linux is way safer, can't get a virus. I usually hear it around Mac OS. Or the Mac diehard people will be like, no, you can't get a virus on Mac. So
let me tell you something. I was at DEF CON in August, and I saw a number of sessions on Mac malware, how to create it, how to deploy it, how to avoid detection, and they were pretty profound. So if any of you are Mac users and you think there's no such thing as malware on a Mac, go watch some of the DEF CON content, some of the recordings. It'll open your eyes.
Have fun with that.
But to your point, it's no worse than Windows. It's no better. It's just different, right?
It's different. Yeah. Well, so here's another question, I guess, along those lines. Do you feel like if you're on Linux, you need an antivirus? Because I have thought about that. Because there's no built-in thing.
Right.
There's no Windows Defender or whatever the Windows security, whatever the new thing is.
Yeah.
Unless maybe there is something and I have just never seen it.
Not by default, typically.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen one in any distro built in.
Yeah. So would you recommend a Linux user install some sort of antivirus?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
I absolutely would.
Do you have any recommendations or?
I don't want to endorse any particular thing, but there are free ones. There are some that are free for non-commercial use.
And are they specific to Linux, or are they just?
Most of them have Windows, Mac OS, Linux variants. Some of them have iOS and Android variants. Most of them are not Linux specific.
Oh, okay.
But if you're using Linux as a daily driver, I would say absolutely. It's worth this slight bit of extra effort to put antivirus in place in the unlikely event that you're exposed to malware. It's something else that's going to prevent it from happening.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I should look into that. So I have another category of questions. Like I think I'm going to present it from the high level first, of like the differences between security practices on Linux versus Windows.
Oh, okay.
Right. Like I think we just touched on one of them of like running antivirus. Like I know we've talked about plenty of times where it's like on the Windows side, whatever's built into Windows is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need to be running another application on top of that. Right. So that's something that's different on Linux than Windows. Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to find places where it's like, you know what? You're used to doing it this way on Windows, but you should probably do it a little bit different on Windows on Linux. I don't have any specific examples, but yeah, I don't know.
So, yeah, it's an interesting question.
You know what? I do have one.
Yeah.
Like, so we were talking about public Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah.
If I'm going to Starbucks, like I've been logging into hotel Wi-Fis and stuff, and I'm like, oh, is it easier for a malicious person to see that I'm on a Linux laptop and be like, ooh, wow, that's much easier to attack than a Windows laptop in the next room? Like, do you think going on public Wi-Fi is riskier on Linux than Windows?
I think it's the same. I don't think there's really any attack surface differences. The types of attacks that'll happen on public Wi-Fi, the types of compromises, data compromises in particular, would be exactly the same versus Linux versus Mac OS versus Windows versus really anything else. So I don't think you're more at risk, but I definitely don't think you're any safer.
Okay. I didn't know if maybe like you can access the NIC easier on Linux than Windows.
I don't think so. If there's that kind of vulnerability, I've never heard of it.
Okay. I do have another one.
Okay.
Think about it. I'm getting the juices flowing.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit last time you were out at the PCWorld studios. I have an affinity for picking up just random USB devices on the ground. I'm like, ooh, wow, a free 128 gigabyte thumbstick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to use that. Awesome.
Wow. I mean, do you just eat random food you find on the floor at Walmart too? Is that what you do?
Not at Walmart. I don't go to Walmart.
Oh, well then obviously you're fine because you don't go to Walmart. Okay. Pardon me.
Target though, that's, no. So, but I feel like you did say, hey, listen, sticking a compromised USB device in a Linux laptop is different than sticking one in a. So why?
It is.
Let's talk about that.
So the way Linux handles removable media is very, very, very different than Windows. Windows, by default, wants to make life easy for you when you install removable media. So it will actually look at the content, offer to run like setup.exe or installer.exe, or offer to show you what's there.
So
Windows
nice
will actually, I'm sorry?
That's so nice of them.
It is. It's very courteous and very dangerous. So Linux by default doesn't do any of that. Linux by default just, if you're lucky, will mount the volume. And that's about it. But in a good way. I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Oh, okay.
I would rather have it not examine the content of a removable volume because there might be something on there. You might not know what's on that USB stick you found in some random...
Oh, I usually don't.
Right. But you probably just want to clean it up, right? You're probably just thinking...
Like format it, yeah.
Right. So Linux would be way better for that because Linux will not examine any of the content. You could simply plug it in and tell Linux, go ahead and wipe everything that you find on this drive. Don't look at it. Don't interact with it. Just go ahead and wipe it. So it won't activate code by default. It won't launch anything. Windows goes a little too far being nice and tries to activate some of that content for you. Again, it's good intention, but malicious actors can use that against you.
So Linux sounds like it's perfect for me then. Well, are there any, just simply mounting the device, is there any way to have something like an attack, like by just mounting? You don't have to...
On Linux?
Yeah.
Generally not.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to say no because that's too much of an absolute,
yeah.
for me. But I've not seen that happen. On Linux, typically you do have to explicitly interact with some of the content on that volume. The act of mounting it itself doesn't launch any code on the device.
Interesting. Okay. So but it's not like containerizing it. It's not like saying like, you know what, this is somehow firewalled from the rest of the system.
Nope.
Okay. It's not actively doing anything for you.
Correct.
Interesting. So you could still go in there and launch whatever it is and have the same problem.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I guess, is there any other things you can think of that might be a difference between using Linux daily versus Windows that is like, you know what, this is a difference, either good or bad?
Yeah. The biggest thing for me is drivers. There are some.
Oh yeah.
So there are some, once you're through setup, obviously, I think it's about the same day to day. But Linux drivers are different than Windows drivers, and some things are supported in Linux much better than Windows. Some things are supported in Windows much better than Linux. So it's really just about knowing what your hardware is, and knowing that everything is going to work correctly before you decide I'm going to commit to using this or that operating system, whatever operating system it is, really.
True. I mean, but I will say that is one of the things that I still continue to have a hard time wrapping my head around, is that the drivers are part of the kernel. Like, it's just, the device should work or not. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, okay, well, I have a new thing plugged in, I got to go download a driver and install it on the Windows side. Like, that still kind of breaks my brain. Did you have any issue with that or no?
Well, I don't have any issue with the theory and the concept of how it works. The kernel is very different in Windows versus Linux. I've had problems with functionality, and it's very hit or miss. Like, as I said, I'm a huge Lenovo fan. I've occasionally encountered a Lenovo device where the drivers are just awful in Linux, and they're great in Windows. And I've sometimes encountered it where they're great in Linux and they're awful in Windows. It just depends. So really it's about testing and making sure. And also, before you do a full upgrade, making sure that you read release notes. And I think it takes a little bit more work on Windows or on Linux side to make sure an update isn't going to destroy your thing. Windows, they try really, really, really hard, Microsoft, to test these updates before they release them. And I know you're all laughing. Oh, I saw this one that cratered Windows, blah, blah, blah. Microsoft really does try hard. It's not perfect, but I've had more updates cause Linux to fail, more kernel updates cause Linux to fail than Windows. In my experience, your mileage may vary, but that's just what I see. So I have to discipline myself to, if I'm going to do a full update or full upgrade rather, I need to make sure I know that the kernel is going to work, that the drivers aren't going to bomb out. So I do a little bit of reading. Okay.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, because they're for better or worse. It seems like there's less safeguards. Like in the well, speaking of the kernel, how safe is the kernel? Like the kernel to me exists out there. Like, oh, I know, there's a team of people who are working on the kernel, and then it gets disseminated down to all the distros, and there are different ways that they do it. Like how safe is the kernel itself?
It's as safe as you want it to be, I guess, as you imagine it is. The kernel is managed by a number of folks that generally, check each other and check themselves to make sure that there's no malware being introduced or any kind of extraneous code or unsafe or unstable code. But Linux, I think it's a good point to talk very quickly about. In the Linux space, a lot of the security is based on a concept called the many eyes theory. And you've heard of this?
Yep.
Cool. So if anyone's not heard of it, there's so many people looking and monitoring and watching what's going on in Linux that it would be really, really, really hard for something to intentionally be introduced that's malicious or negative or unstable or unchecked because there's so many eyes looking at it. That's where the name comes from. So if you're comfortable with that philosophy, then you're comfortable with Linux. I am comfortable with that philosophy. I think it would be really hard to slip one by, 200 or 300 kernel developers and get it into a distro. So I think that's a good philosophy. If you're not comfortable with that, then Linux is, fundamentally just not for you.
Because actually there was an episode of The Full Nerd where we had a question from somebody, and you were actually live in the chat, so you're able to answer it. Where somebody was like, "Hey, well, why does he trust people, openly working on a kernel and open source software, but not trust something like those tools or those teams that take Windows patches from Windows 11 and backport them to Windows 10, or like Tiny 11 that goes in and like makes a version of Windows 11 that takes out a bunch of fluff."
Hard no.
Hard no. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So like, and you did have a good answer, and it's kind of along those lines.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, it's different.
It is. But I think that's the point. If you trust where it's coming from and you trust everybody checking each other, I think we're good. So I trust Linux. I really do.
Okay.
I don't trust everything about Linux. I don't think it's a perfect nirvana thing, but I definitely do trust it holistically.
Does this apply to software as well? We're talking about open source software. Is that safe?
The same many eyes theory applies to open source software. Open source software from one individual developer that has not a lot of downloads, or where the developer doesn't really take ownership, or isn't someone that I would trust, or some entity that I would trust. No, I'm not going to trust that as much as I do a project like OBS that has a lot of people working on it, has a lot of people examining the code, reviewing the code, writing code. It would be really hard to, again, slip one in under the wire or under the guard for something like OBS. So even open source software, we still have to have that test in our mind of, do I trust that?
And that many eyes thing also can apply to the end user too, because like I would assume if somebody does come up with something, then they'll try to blast it out to other forums and be like, "Hey, I ran into this," or like alert other people to its existence, right?
I would hope so. Not everybody is a good Linux citizen. Not everybody reports bugs. Not everybody goes up on forums and says, "Hey, I downloaded this piece of software and it's got malicious code in it, and I reported it to the I opened an issue and it got closed immediately." So it looks like it's intentionally malicious. Not everybody is comfortable reporting that, communicating about that. So you kind of can't turn a blind eye to that. You have to think for yourself. You have to be vigilant.
Be vigilant.
Vigilant.
Yeah. I did ask our fine folks over on Discord to submit some questions. And I do have some questions to you. Like there's a couple directed towards you, but there's also ones that I think are just being talked about generally that you can help talk about. One of them is from friend of the show Spectre, says, "Are most mainstream Linux distros safe for users out of the box? That is, if you install Ubuntu, Fedora, do you need to add additional configuration to have a secure system as a normal user?" So we talked about the antivirus thing. Is there anything else that you would recommend people do?
Absolutely. It's a great question. Thank you for that. Spectre, was it?
Spectre, yeah.
Thank you, Spectre. So the answer would be, generally speaking, Linux is pretty darn secure right out of the box, with a couple of caveats. We talked about considering installing anti-malware. I think that's a good step. Also, update it. A lot of folks never update Linux when they install it. They just assume that it either comes pre-updated and has no updates ever, or that there's some, and most distributions don't have an automatic in the background updater. So keep it updated, keep anti-malware on there, and then just use your kind of common sense as far as safe practices that you would use anywhere. And so, so directly to answer your question, it's really darn secure straight out of the box, in my opinion.
Okay. And a follow-up to that is App Armor needed / useful? They installed it on their Cache desktop, but people said it's worthless because it's in complain mode and doesn't actually enforce. So what is App Armor? I don't know what this is.
It's yet another application wrapper kind of, security wrapper. It's just another containerization thing. Okay. And containerization, there's always benefits and drawbacks to all types of containers, whatever it is, creating security partitions between things. I think it's a little overkill. If you don't trust the app, why would you trust the app with an extra security app around the app that you don't trust already, right?
Yeah, right.
So if you don't trust the app, don't run the app. Don't install the app. Make somebody else do it. or install it in a VM, or install it. I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, if you distrust an app so much that you want to wrap it, don't run it.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know.
I have another question from Union Strudel. Friend of the show. The question's for me, but I'm actually going to ask you because I don't know it.
Fair enough.
When you installed Ubuntu, did you encrypt the whole disk and use custom partitions for root, home, boot, etc.? Actually, we talked about the custom partition thing with Wendell, so I'm going to leave that question for there. But my question to you is, should I encrypt the whole disk?
Yes. You know what? There's no yes or no. So just because Windows now encrypts by default with BitLocker doesn't mean that it should. In my opinion, it depends on the data security that you need. How much do you need to protect your data? How concerned are you that someone's going to physically compromise the device and steal the data? If you're concerned about that, if that is a significant concern for you, then sure, encrypt the disk. Absolutely, no problem at all. And that would be the same if we were talking about Windows BitLocker or Linux with one of the many, many different tools you get in there that you can use to encrypt the disk. So the answer really is, if you're concerned about data breach on a device, physical data breach, like someone stealing a laptop at an airport or out of your house or something and using that data, yes, turn it on.
Does it affect the performance of Linux or applications any different than Windows?
So I can't really talk to that because I'm not super familiar with it. I can tell you that generally speaking, generally speaking, the encryption process, turning it on and letting the software encrypt all the data, that is a significant resource consumption while it's happening.
Right. Yeah. But once
after
it's done,
it's usually a very minor, if any, impact.
Okay. And then to piggyback though off that one, actually, I wanted to talk to you about this earlier.
Yeah.
Because this is a part of my experience so far, is that when I was dual booting off of a single drive, I had to turn off Secure Boot.
Okay.
I had to turn off BitLocker as well, but I turned off Secure Boot. And then when I switched to dual booting off of two separate drives, I also, for certain distros, I had to turn off Secure Boot. Some have Secure Boot keys that you can, I know all of them you can put in manually, Secure Boot keys, but like something like Ubuntu actually just works with Secure Boot out of the box. How important is it to run Secure Boot? Say I actually was trying to dual boot off the same drive and I needed to keep Secure Boot off.
It depends on the physical security of your device. To some degree, also, Secure Boot prevents against compromises around like rootkit or bootkit even. Compromises. So I think Secure Boot is actually kind of valuable. I think keeping it on whenever possible is important, just as a general good security practice. Is it critical? Well, if it was critical, you wouldn't be able to turn it off. Manufacturers would simply not allow you to access it or not allow you to install your own keys. It would always be their keys and only their keys. So it's not necessarily mandatory for every scenario, but personally, I would not turn off Secure Boot.
Okay.
If I found an operating system that was not trustworthy enough and didn't have keys that I could install, I just wouldn't run that operating system.
Okay. And I also think you need to turn off Secure Boot to run a live environment off Ventoy. I think so.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think so. But yeah, but you could always then turn it back on once you're installed. Okay. All right, Mikey, that was a lot of security talk. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, answer questions, a lot of stupid questions. But I like to air out the stupid questions.
Adam, there are no stupid questions, just stupid users.
Oh, true. I'm one of those as well. So, thank you for coming on the Dual Boot Diaries. You have now been our third official guest on the podcast.
Yay!
And I'm excited to continue this journey. Maybe we'll have you on again later when I'm a Linux expert. I can teach you something.
Yay!
Be like, actually, did you know you could do this?
I did not know you could recompile the kernel in order to get. No, I did not know anything.
Have you had to recompile kernels?
I'm that old. I have had to manually recompile kernel.
Yep. Yeah. No, I luckily I don't think I'm going to do that ever.
No, probably not. It's a pain. So
Yeah.
lucky for you.
Or, you know what, subscribe to the show, and maybe who knows? Maybe that's season 8 of the Dual Boot Diaries is Adam compiling his own kernel, something like that. Anyway, yeah, you know where to get to us. Subscribe, all the places. We'll be back in the next episode for a normal episode. This is a very special episode. So, Mikey, I appreciate it.
Thanks for
having
me so
much. Is there anything you want to pimp on the internet? Anywhere people can find you, follow your work, read your man pages?
My man, that's really obscure right there. That's a really obscure reference. Make sure to help folks that can't protect themselves security-wise. Like, help them out. Do that. If you do that, you'll be making me happy. You don't have to pimp me out. You don't have to send me money. You don't have to follow or sub or like or subscribe or ring the bell or thumbs up or 5 stars. Just go ahead and help folks out that don't know security. Like, help them protect themselves, because moms and dads and cousins and people like that, they need our help.
Yeah. Make Mikey happy.